It sounds like I am.
Hello.
Hello. I just want to grab something a minute. Let's see if I can manage it properly this time. It screwed everything up last time. So I'll have to sort of see. Oh, no, that's not what I want.
You're not being techie, are you?
And yeah, sort of, but not really. Weed thriller, right? Let's get the article. Here it is. No, I just had the most amazingly gorgeous thrill this morning. I don't know why I read. Well, I do know why I read the news now, but I mean, I just thought, oh, I'll read the news. I never read the news.
No, I've tried to avoid it.
I succeed in avoiding it most of the time, but unless I turn it on via Google, I never see it. So, but this morning I did, and there was a reason, and I don't know whether you've seen it yet on my Facebook, but can I share the screen?
Go for it.
Yes. She says learning how to share the screen. Okay, so where is it?
Right at the bottom of the screen.
Window. No. It's more than that. I don't want that.
At the bottom of your screen, hit
I
share.
know, I got it. I can't get the thing I want.
Share screen, and then
oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's entire screen or window, but you have to click on the picture rather than the word, if that makes sense. And then hit share.
It does, but it doesn't, if you see what I mean. Oh, no, I don't. I want Chrome tab. At least I hope I want Chrome tab. Right, I might actually possibly have it. Is that going to show it?
Yeah, I can see it there. Let's add it.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
There you go.
Okay. Well, so the Groniad rules again, guys. But it really was thrilling. Can I actually do that on here, or have I got to do that on?
Scroll.
I've got to scroll on this screen. Now, are we scrolling?
Yep. There you
go. Have you got the picture?
Biodiversity. Oh, that's a cool picture.
Isn't it just? What?
Oh, from the RHS flower show. Excellent.
Yeah, at Tatton Court. And the RHS, for goodness sake, the RHS, who is sort of, almost as institutional as Boris, they've actually given a gold medal to this garden.
Excellent.
Who is doing a wild garden with all the things that ordinary people or people previously, sorry about the adverts, all these people are saying are weeds.
Yeah.
And that to me is just like, wow, because if the RHS is saying this, people are going to listen. And let's get rid of all these bloody adverts. Why do we have to have adverts? Because nobody has
money.
I know. I shouldn't say this kind of thing. Anyway, the garden was called Weed Thriller, which I thought was okay, fine. Jackson rules okay, kind of thing. I don't know whether they had anybody doing wiggles in the garden, but it would have been fun. And of course, it's all full of all the stuff that everybody doesn't like. And yet it's absolutely beautiful.
Brilliant.
So I was just like, whoa, this has made my day. This has made my day, because this is what we all need to do. Even if you can only do it in a little patch, you can still help with that.
I have mine in pots.
Yeah.
I have pots of wildflower seeds.
Mm-hmm. Which is a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
And you've also got, you've got borders, and you've got more than just the ordinary stuff in your borders, haven't you? I shall take this away now. I think we'll stop screen share and come back to us. But you've got more stuff than just sort of, ordinary.
Oh, I try to have, even in the cultivated part, the flower beds, and I try to have diversity. so that there is something for everything. But I received a couple of different packets of wildflower seeds from different places, and there was nowhere in the garden to put them at the moment. We are planning on having some kind of wildflower thing next year, but there was nowhere this year for them. So I just put them in pots, and they've all come up, and they're really pretty.
Yeah. And I bet they're sort of buzzing away with insects most of the time.
The whole garden has been, actually. The whole garden has been. It's been brilliant.
And it just makes such a difference because there's food for everybody all around. Yeah. And I had another little sort of thrill this morning, and because I haven't got my phone. You know, you've never got your phone when you want to take a picture. Actually, a video would have been really good, but I'll try later and see if I can get one. But my buddleia's out. Do you have buddleia?
I don't have it in the garden at the moment, no. But it's the butterfly bush, isn't it?
It's the butterfly bush.
Yeah.
And mine is the ordinary sort of wild purple variety. And there's some like opposite the bathroom window. So there I was in the bathroom, and unlike teenagers, I don't normally take my phone there. So I didn't have my phone.
Take your phone in the bathroom. It's just gross.
And it's totally gross. And apart from anything else, I have no intention of accidentally dropping it anywhere.
It's like that.
I really can't handle that. So anyway, I was actually brushing my teeth, not doing anything else. So I mean, my hands were full of everything. As you do when you see something exciting. But there's this buddleia bush hanging over the rose garden and the flowers. And the blue tits are actually going and hanging on the flowers and eating them.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. That's
and
brilliant.
It was sort of like, wow, I haven't seen you doing that. And I thought they probably did. And I've seen squirrels eating them too.
Right.
So, but this one, I've got to actually get there, you know, one of the tip feeding frenzies, and video this because it's so great to actually see. So, you know, there's so much stuff if you do, you know, if you let some wildflowers in. There really is.
Our garden's quite small, so we have to be careful with what we put in there. And buddleia does get quite large, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But you can get sort of modern, you know, grown ones, and they won't necessarily grow so large, and they don't spread like the purple one does. And there's some lovely dark pinks and reds or almost reds, you know, carmine. And there's even a yellow one, which is absolutely stunning. And the insects like them.
Yeah, the flowers are beautiful, aren't they?
They are. And the insects like them just as much. So we're both into our tea or our coffee or whatever it is. Yeah.
tea today because it's chucking down with rain outside.
Envy.
Oh, yeah.
Send it up here, please.
Even the dog wouldn't go out in it this morning. I had to physically carry Eric out to the garden this morning to make sure he didn't.
He just stood there going,
yeah, he was. I'm not going out in that. Yeah, no, he wasn't happy this morning.
So, but you can certainly send, you know, tell it to come up here because I do need it.
We've had several days of rain, and we've had a couple of nights of thunder and lightning too.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm a bit bleary-eyed this morning because I didn't sleep.
Do you mind it, or does it just keep you awake?
It just keeps me awake. No, I like the energy of it.
I do.
But yeah, I'm a light sleeper, so no chance of me sleeping through it.
I mean, you just get off and then boom.
Yeah.
What?
But we've had loads of really heavy rain too. We've actually had flooding in some parts of the city, and we never get that. So I think it's just quite a lot of rain in a very short period of time. But
on very dry ground.
Yes, the garden has appreciated it on one hand because it's been watered, but on the other hand, it has just battered down. The hollyhock is horizontal. Yeah. The sunflowers are fighting to stand up against it. So it has done quite a lot of damage out there.
Well, it does. Heavy rain does. I mean, the last time we had some, it knocked my tall grasses down.
Mm-hmm.
They do come up again,
which
is great, but it does, and we're getting like, we're not just getting nice rain, we're getting either, bathfuls tipped at us, or none.
It's all or nothing, isn't it? It is all or nothing.
Yeah. And sorry, guys, that's because of us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That's what we've done.
Absolutely.
And we can't actually change it back, because an awful lot of it is because of the melted ice, which has changed the whole weather system over the poles, which changes it everywhere else. And how are you going to put back billions of tons of ice?
No, that's not going to happen, is it?
Let's just face it. You're just not going to do it. Despite that amazing, did you see that amazing James Bond film that was all in this ice thing?
My husband is a huge James Bond fan. He knows all the words for all the films, and yes.
I mean, it was just so funny. It was. I enjoy them because they're completely over the top, and it's funny. You go, wow, really? Whoa!
It's good to escape sometimes.
I met I knew some people in America, and they actually thought MI6 was like that.
Yes, but a lot of people think that all of the British speak like this and have afternoon tea. We don't, people. We don't.
No, we don't. No. Honestly, Agatha Christie is great sort of fun if you're into that kind of thing, but she was never even real at the time. And she certainly isn't real now.
Much as I quite like the idea of having afternoon tea, I think that's terribly civilized. No, we don't all do that. I think actually I do find particularly the Americans are surprised that England has so many different accents, and that we even have a north and a south. I do find that, and we do. We really do. And south, yes. And the accents they range quite dramatically, don't they? It is quite, some of the areas do have really strong accents.
And you won't necessarily understand them. When I went to America, I was most amused because I was sort of brought up to do BBC English, but I can do lots of other things too. And you get these people, I was about 18 and with a family, I was pen friends with this girl who was also 18 and la, la, la. And people come and say, oh, speak to me, honey, speak to me. So, I mean, I come out with, we come from our kid. And, jam butter then.
See, I understand that, but most people
that's the queerest folk.
And we do have a huge diversity, don't we, of accents, right? And it's such a small country for so many different local variations of accent. Yeah, because I'm from Surrey, so I am from the BBC English. Although I live in Portsmouth now, I am from Surrey.
Hampshire's got a lovely accent too, which I can't do.
But yeah, Hampshire's got quite a country accent. In Portsmouth, it's a bit more lower.
Okay.
But I'm born and bred in Surrey, so I did have a posh voice.
It's handy because it does mean you probably enunciate your words properly and people do manage to understand you. But
I try. I think 30 years of being in Portsmouth, I do slip a bit now.
I do if I'm with people who've got the accent of wherever they are, and I find I'm doing it, and I have to sort of say, I'm sorry, I'm just a parrot. Really, I'm not being insulting, I can't help it. But I was thinking though, you were saying about so many different accents, but hey, isn't that this course that's coming off next year?
Yes.
Because it's all the different tribes that we are.
It is, yeah. It's been fascinating, actually. I knew about the tribes, the ancient tribes of Britain, vaguely. One of the rituals I went to was led by Professor Hutton, and of course his group is the Doe Bunny. And I thought, well, that's a strange name. So I looked it up and realised it was the name of one of the original tribes. But that's pretty much all I knew about it. So I have been digging into all the different tribes across Great Britain. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
And some of them, you get into the ancient kingdoms. There's a site which is really good for that. I'll try and remember to post it. I'll post it up here. Because you might find that useful as well, because there's a couple of the ancient kingdoms, and one was the one I used to live in Hereford, which is called Urging, and it's tiny. It's literally only a few miles across, but it was really important. It had lots of stuff happening in it and this sort of thing. And the other one is where our poet Ted Hughes used to live in Yorkshire, and the name has gone right out of my head temporarily. And that's a tiny little kingdom again. And we lived together in our tribes, and everybody mingled. I mean, you do. And people mingled a hell of a lot more than has been thought in those days, like literally across the world and all that sort of thing. I mean, think about Oopsie the Iceman, and how far he walked and all that.
Yeah.
But we do, and we still have those links back to our tribes.
Absolutely.
And, when you think of, it's different, say, take America, because the American native peoples all have their tribes and their languages and their accents and their ways and their differences and their similarities too.
Yeah.
And then the white people are all incomers from all over Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they were quite weird anyway when they went. Sorry about this, America. And they tended to not mingle. Some did. A few did actually mingle and learn. But in general, they sort of stood apart from these people they called savages, who were actually at least as intelligent as they were, but just lived very differently.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened in Virginia is they didn't half screw up the agriculture, the incomers, because the Americans knew what the land would grow, and they practiced what we would sort of call nowadays permaculture, forest gardens. But that wasn't what people had done back in Britain. So we were going to turn this whole new continent on the other side of the world into Britain. Really?
Yeah, we do like to do that.
Anyway, they did. And of course, things wouldn't grow, and they messed up the forest there and all sorts of things. And a few people did actually learn and change their diet so that they could eat what grew naturally there. But most of them didn't. And so they haven't got the same link to old tribes that we have, because they're a continent away for a start, as well as hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And we're not. You find the same thing in France. I know you've been to France. I've been
on many occasions.
Yeah. And you go to different parts of France and the accent is different. Sometimes it's so different that you really have to sort of stand back.
My school French doesn't cope.
I keep one phrase in my vocabulary for whenever I go, pardon, je suis anglaise, mais...
You have to make an apology, don't you? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm English.
And I just apologise for being English and not understanding them.
Yes.
And the most embarrassing thing is that you'll be in this tiny little village, that is, 3 houses, a church, and a tobacco. And this old peasant farmer speaks perfect English back to you.
And they know you're English, don't they? Just by looking at you. Yes.
And but they do like it if you actually say, I'm sorry, I can't speak your language.
I
Help
think
me.
yes, I think people appreciate if you make an effort, don't
Yeah, they do. And but you sort of think, what is happening to our education? These people can speak. I mean, when I was right down in the south in the Pyrenees, they speak Languedoc, which is not French.
No.
They also speak French, and some of them speak English as well. So that's 3 languages in little villages where some of the older people, I mean, this is going back 20 years, some of the older people had never actually been further than the nearest town. But they could, and they did.
Yeah.
So what's up with us?
For my real job, I often in the older days had to phone Hong Kong quite often, or Taiwan, and it always amazed me that the person picked up the phone would speak perfect English. I am in awe of people that speak languages. I really am. My French is good enough to order in a restaurant and buy things in a shop. And I am embarrassed to say that's about as far as it goes. I am trying with French because I have got some very, very lovely French followers. 3 of my books have been translated into French now. So I know I have some fantastic French followers. So I am trying. Languages are not my thing. I do really struggle with them.
I can do that. I can get a bit further. After I've been there a couple of days, I can make it through a reasonably slow conversation. And we get there. And the more I practice, of course, as you find, the more you do it.
Yeah.
The easier it gets.
It's using it, isn't it? I don't use it. We haven't been to France for a few years, so I haven't used it. And you do get rusty, don't you?
You do, quickly too, because both of us live very busy lives. So you don't actually have time to sort of sit down and do an hour's French practice.
No.
Which is,
I have found actually looking at the tribes and looking into some of the deities where the Romans obviously came in and then took them over and that kind of thing. But there are a lot of similarities between archaeological finds in the UK that they found similar inscriptions or similar names in France.
Yeah.
There's quite a link there, isn't there, with the Gauls? And there is quite an interesting link with it all.
Quite across to, I mean, there's from my side of the country, the West Country, I mean, that link through Wales into Brittany is so strong. I mean, if you can speak Cornish, you'll be understood in Brittany.
Yes.
If you speak Breton, you'll be understood by a man who can speak Cornish.
Yeah.
And you will be understood probably by someone in parts of Wales. At least they will have an idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The worst problem is that the Bretons really go in for Zs and things. And that can sort of confuse because the Welsh don't. And when you get down to the Basque country, which I have and I love it, if ever you get the chance, do go. It's fantastic. Then you get X's and Z's. And it's usually XTZ. NGABS or something.
It's like a random Scrabble throw.
Sort of, yeah. And you sort of go, and then again, and I found this in Greece as well. When you actually get to talk to them, you're in the cafe and you say something, and they say, I mean, one that comes up, which is sort of Languedoc Basque cross, is Katu. Katu is cat.
Makes sense.
And you find these links across.
Yeah.
And you actually, that's quite an easy one to spell. But then you find that this word that you were staring at actually comes out in the way they pronounce the letters into something you can hear and understand. And I'm sure it must have been the same for our tribes.
Yes. Yeah. Languages are fascinating. I just can't wrap my head around them. It's not one of my skills. But I do find it fascinating that there are these links. So, an unearthed stone tablet that mentions one goddess in the middle of Hadrian's Wall.
Yeah.
And there's another one found in the middle of France somewhere with the same name on it.
Yeah.
The fact that these people obviously travelled so far with no trains, buses, planes, the fact that they did travel between the countries and travelled so far and brought their different cultures and particularly, I guess, with the Romans as well, there's been inscriptions found where the Roman soldiers have come over and they've obviously just adopted the spirit of place or the goddess of whatever place they're stationed at and just used it as for their own worship. I think there must have been a huge amount of cooperation with it all.
And crossover, there certainly was.
Yeah.
I'm not quite convinced about the cooperation.
Yeah. Wrong word.
Says the Celt in me. Like bloody invaders. And that's actually interesting because one of the things, and are you a time team person?
Yes, love them.
Yeah. I remember Phil Harding talking about, there's an accent for you.
Oh, yes.
And that's from a bit north of you, but yeah, that's it. And anyway, he was talking about this. And when the Romans left, because it was quite a sudden leaving because all sorts of stuff happened around Italy and that, how quickly we went back to our roundhouses.
Yes.
We didn't keep bricks and underfloor heating and all this kind of thing. It seems that we didn't actually want to, because they got people like, the native people to build the stuff for them. They went out there. You can't imagine this Roman senator on his hands and knees with a brick and some mortar, can you really? And so we knew how to do it.
Yes.
But we chose to go back to what we had before.
I wish we'd kept the underfloor heating, actually. Interesting. My son and I went to Fishbourne Roman Palace
a couple
of days ago, which would have been a huge Roman palace. It was one of only two, I think, that were that massive in the middle of Chichester, basically. Not much left now apart from the mosaic floors, really.
Yeah.
But it is, yes, they would have trained local people to do things. Some of the mosaic floors, they think, were actually laid by local people because there are mistakes made and it's not quite right. But the underfloor heating, what a brilliant idea. Why didn't we keep up with that? I think it's a fantastic idea.
And I do. But have you ever lived for any few days in a roundhouse?
No. Are you going to sway me to roundhouses?
Well, I'm going to say try it. There are places.
I've sat in them and had sort of stories read and spent time. I've not actually stayed in them for longer than a day, really.
There was or used to be the one in Hampshire.
There's one at Patterson.
Yeah. They used to run courses or have people run courses and things there, and you could stay in them for a couple of
nights. They do day things there. I've been to a storytelling and they do a Wicker Man thing there as well.
That's right, they do. Yeah. And there's one over in Wales as well, and I think I'm sure they do longer courses, and you actually live in the roundhouse for a few days. It's amazing. Have you been in a yurt? Have you stayed in a yurt?
I haven't stayed in one. I have been in one. I have to admit, I am a bad pagan. I like my suite. I like my toilet facilities and my shower.
Can be done, but the warmth and the feel, and you actually don't get so cold. In fact, you don't. I didn't really feel. I'm a terribly cold person, as well as I can't stand the heat either. My temperature range is about yay big. But I was fine, and I thought I wasn't going to be. And it's amazing how good they are. And you sort of worry about smoke. But if it's been built properly, no.
Yeah, it just goes up out the centre, doesn't it?
Well, it doesn't even do that. If it's been built properly, there's no hole in the middle. It goes up into the thatch, and you just do not have any bugs.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And there will be sometimes a cloud, but it'd be right up in the top and not very much. And the whole thing is built so that the air is drawn up and you don't get the smoke like you do around a campfire in the same way.
Do you think the round shape is important with that? There's got to be something in that engineering, the actual round yes, of the roof.
Yeah, the sort of chimney effect that it has. So it's funny how we went back and how we have kept accents and words from different parts of the world. I mean, one of my favourite is my mum's for a spider, which is hickabock. And that's real. That's Devon.
That's brilliant.
That's Devon, and it's a spider.
I like that.
And there's all sorts. So when you get north into Scotland, of course, there's all sorts of words that are different. But there's lots of Yorkshire ones and Lancashire ones and Cheshire ones and words around here in Shropshire and the West Midlands that are different to ours for things.
Yes.
And we've kept it.
Yes.
And I think that's important.
Oh, yeah. I think that's why, for me, this journey into the ancient British deities has been quite a personal one. It has changed the way my path has sort of wandered, really. I've always kind of focused on the Celtic deities, but it never felt quite right to actually focus on more specifically the English ones. Has been a real personal journey for me, and I think unearthing some of the ones that are not really have never really been heard of, or there's only sort of 2 inscriptions for them. I think that's really important. I think it's really important to draw on your own heritage. That's where my roots are, my ancestors are, is England. I don't have Irish or Welsh or Scottish in my DNA. It's English, bit of Scandinavian thrown in, but it's the majority English. So for me, it's been quite a personal journey, and it is fascinating because a lot of the times you have to work with the goddess just by making connection with her or with the land, because there aren't huge amounts of things written about them. It's been fascinating. It really has turned my own pathway into quite a different direction.
I'm not really surprised. I can understand that. And I find, like with my students, you do, when they come, they've read. Of course they've read. Everybody does. And so they ask you things that are really quite like small, like, well, who is your earth goddess, or who is your war goddess, or whatever like that. And you sort of go, well, we don't really. It depends on where you are. And it also depends on what you're actually talking about. I mean, the Morrigan has been sort of shrunk into like a war goddess for a lot of people. She's not. No. Not as we consider, like, well, we're going to have a fight with Iran or something. She's not like that. And that's the other thing, is we sort of think that everybody's always been fighting.
Feels like it sometimes, but
well, yeah. Certainly feels like they always are. But you really go back and you get, past the Iron Age and through the Bronze Age and really back into the Stone Age, even the Neolithic, that's the New Stone Age, and the Mesolithic and the Paleolithic. There might be fights between people, I'm sure there were, but there was no war.
No. No. Well, they were just fighting to live, really, weren't they? Really didn't have time to fight each other.
Oh, no. I refuse to allow you to spread that myth. Oh, no. They had much better lives than we
I'm
do.
just going to say, but I think in all honesty, they probably had much better lives than we do now, really. Yeah.
It was really only after we started to eat a lot of grain and farm and that sort of thing that our lifespan got shorter.
Yeah.
It actually, the bones that they measure from the Paleolithic are quite old people, like 70, 80.
Yes. Yeah.
And they don't have much in the way of arthritis or diabetes or any of these kind of things. And as we've said before, as a hunter and forager, half a dozen of you at the most need to go out for a couple of hours a week to get enough food for the 30 or so of you in your clan.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time it's effectively playtime, or teach the kids time.
Yes.
Or make something beautiful time.
Yeah.
Or meditate with the goddess time.
Yeah.
And from the artifacts and the inscriptions, as you found, that's what we did.
Yeah.
And
It sounds quite idyllic, really, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I'd even sort of reorganize my showers for that. And
you can find quite a nice stream by.
Oh, no, there's better ways of doing it than that, even, and ways that they could have done too, by making, because we know that they made huge bags and boxes and things like this, and all you need to do is to organize. In fact, when we went to Scotland, one of the places that Fiona and I found, it's like a hot bath sauna.
Right.
And this is from the Neolithic, Mesolithic time. So they knew how to do it. So I'm just sort of like wondering. And as you probably know, I've done a lot of bushcrafting and things like that. And toilets in the woods can be really comfortable. It's not difficult. Honestly, it really isn't difficult. And so, one sort of thinks, right. And then you look at the beautiful things they made and you think, no, these people had lots of leisure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And time.
We were in Cambridge last week before last. We went to the one of the museums there, which was anthropology museum. And that was fascinating, looking at artifacts and pottery and jewelry and clothing that people had made, centuries ago. The skill that people had. And there was a kayak, and it was sewn together with pieces of animal skin and was completely watertight. It was massive. I don't know how long it took them, but it was so beautifully crafted. The skill was amazing.
It is. They knew. There was another Phil Harding one, which is funny. There was a boat like it's one of the big like coracle things, but they're long ways that they transported cattle in, and they decided they were going to have a go at making it with all the original tools and the rest of stuff like that. And again, it's sewn together, as this was planks actually sewn together. And so they did, and they thought, oh well, we'll get some nylon cord or something. And Phil was there going, no, we'll do it this way. So they did, and it looked gorgeous and all this sort of thing. And they put it on the water in Dover Harbour, and it sank.
I had a feeling that was coming.
with several of them in it, which is quite fun. It's very. They obviously set it up that they could do this, and you could, watch. I can't remember the guy's name who used to present it. Anyway, watch him sort of sinking.
Tony
That's
Robinson.
That's the one, Tony.
Baldrick.
That Baldrick. Yeah, he was definitely doing a Baldrick going down. And anyway, so they took it out, and Phil said, "Oh well, no of us have got to do this kind of thing." And I think they made cordage out of willow,
Right.
and which is you bash it again and stretch it a bit like nettle cordage, and
right.
And they did it, and they put it all together, and they got it out of Dover Harbour, and they only turned round because they're starting to get scared. Scared of being run over by all the traffic in the town, not anything else. And Phil was there saying, "Oh, you see, we ain't necessarily improved, of course, because this was wood, and the planks were wood, and the water they expanded."
Yes.
And so there were no holes.
Yeah.
They filled all the holes.
Yeah.
And because they're natural, they filled the holes in the shape of the holes. Whereas the
nylon's never going to.
Well, it's round, and it can only do round, and the hole may not be.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, yeah, right.
Lesson learnt.
Well, they did it like that, obviously, because they wanted to put over the point.
Yeah.
And they succeeded in doing it. I mean, you get the same thing. I've not been, but I've had friends who've been to the fantastic Viking Ship in,
right.
I can't remember which capital it's in. Is it Norway? Anyway, there.
It'd be somewhere over there, wouldn't it?
I mean, I've seen the pictures, and it's like, wow. And they've still got people over there who build that way.
Yeah.
And they've taken them. I mean, they've taken, a couple of people have taken their boats right across from Norway to Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And we can do this.
Yeah. Super skilled people. Super skilled.
And they could navigate too. I mean, they did semi-coastal navigation, which you can do, sort of go up and round the Scottish Islands, and then there's a bit of a gap to Iceland, and there's another bit of a gap to Greenland, etc. But you can do it.
Mm.
And also they found, which they hadn't been able to work out, ways of seeing where the stars were, and almost like a sort of compass, but not. It's like a star compass. And they managed to work out how to use them, and they used them, and they work.
Yeah. Well, I think our ancestors were very, very in tune with the stars and the skies, weren't they? I think they had a huge amount of astrological knowledge.
But then, I mean, they could go out, and they weren't sort of stuck in front of the TV.
And they could see the clear skies.
Yes, which is not necessarily that easy, certainly in a city.
No. We've lost a lot, haven't we? Times do change. I do appreciate we have to have progress and all that kind of thing, but I think
I don't.
I think we've lost a lot, haven't we? I think we have lost an enormous amount. And it's a shame, really.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, that things like your course are going to perhaps really spark people. So
there's a book too. There's going to be a book too. There is a book too. I've got a contract.
Of course there is. Of course there's a book. No, and there has to be. And
I think as well, in today, where this whole cultural appropriation thing and all that is going on, I think it is really important to look to your own roots, to look to your own ancestors. And that isn't always easy, because like these ancient British ones, there isn't a huge amount of information about them. And it's nice to see things. Andrew Anderson wrote about Artio, the Celtic bear goddess. Fantastic. I mean, there's, I think he said there's about 3 inscriptions mentioning, and he travelled the country to different countries looking for her. Fascinating book. But I think it's important to bring those goddesses out to give them their.
I think it's vital, because people say, and I mean, apparently Cameron even said it when he was in power. Oh, there's no British traditions anymore. And so somebody authoritative like that says it, and people sort of go, oh, well, we can't have our own traditions then. It's all made up.
Oh, but there are. I have been doing a lot of folk digging into folk traditions as well, and there are still loads and loads going on particularly in the more the smaller villages and things. But it's still happening.
It is, and I mean, there's Bormia, I think her name is. It's a Morris side in Birmingham, and they're Border Morris again, and they're holding this stuff up.
I love Morris
and doing it and talking about it, and they've just been able to come out because of release of lockdown. So we're actually able to, get out and actually enjoy ourselves this way again. And they just turned up on my Facebook the other day, so saying we're back. And they're another people who they've got the old ways, and they keep the old ways. And one of the things when I was like looking into this ages ago, a bit after university and a bit after university, one of the ways in I found, and I don't know whether you've done this, is folk songs.
Oh yes. Yeah.
You go into folk songs, I'm partly because I used to be able to sing and I used to be able to play the guitar, not anymore.
Okay. I can't save my life. So,
and I was in a folk group all through university, and well, I was in one at school before, and we used to go around and and be singing, and of course meeting other folk singers as well, and sharing songs and sharing stories and all this sort of thing. But the folk songs tell you the stories.
Yes, they are stories in song form, aren't they? Yeah.
Even if they're very small in the story, but they are stories, and they giving you a different flip on how people think. And a lot of them are like, they turn things upside down. And one of my favorites is one called Martin Said to His Man. And it's a drinking song. And the man is telling Martin, effectively, you're a pisshead. But one of the things is Martin sort of goes, I saw a maid milk a bull. And the man goes, fie, man, fie. I saw a maid milk a bull. Fie, who's the fool now? And I saw a maid milk a bull. Every pull a bucketful. And it's crazy, and it's upside down. There's a rat chase a cat and all this kind of thing. But it's upside down, but it's also like, really? Which way up is your world?
Yeah, makes you think about things.
And they do. And yes, it's great fun to sing, and it's a great one for, in the pub, because everybody can join in.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what folk songs are about too, isn't it? About everyone joining in, and
Well, they are, but I think they're also tellers of tales, and they are the teaching tales in a different way. I mean, the one, the Cold Blacksmith, is a goddess chase song.
Right.
And so, the Smith, hunky dusky Smith, is looking at this woman. Whoa. Now, she's wearing a red dress. Now, you look through legends about who the goddess in the red dress is. And there's tons of it. And there's tons of it in Europe, not just in this country. And so he says, fancy you. And she goes, And what they do is, they're both magicians. It's also called the Twain Magicians. Is she turns into something, like she'll turn into a pigeon and he turns into a hawk.
Right.
She turns, like Fee-Faw song, she turns into a hare, he turns into a hand, that kind of thing. But it goes on, it got a lovely complicated tune. It goes on quite a bit. And eventually she's decided he can keep up with her sufficiently to be worth the effort. And this is the point. It's not a rape song. It's like, can you still catch me? Still coming? Run out of breath yet? And so she turns herself into a bed, and he becomes a coverlet.
Right.
And that's okay, he's passed the test.
Yeah.
And there's so many of those, and around Europe as well, that you sort of think, oh, that's a different way up than we were all taught at school.
Yeah.
It's not the goddess after the god after the goddess. It's the goddess saying, well, if you want me, come and catch me then.
You got to work for it.
Yeah, you got to work for it, man. I don't have anybody. And I love those sort of things, and we need to bring them out.
Yeah, it's part of our heritage, isn't it?
It is. And it's stuff that we need to know, and we need to know now. I mean, I'm totally into the idea of equality and women and this sort of thing. I'm not a feminist in the fact that I'm not heavily into women as opposed to, men are all freaks and rubbish kind of thing.
No.
But if we turn things upside down like those songs do, doesn't that help?
Yeah. Well, the goddess was, foremost originally, wasn't she?
Yeah. And she brings forth everything.
Yeah.
Yes, the masculine in that sense fertilizes everything, but she holds it and wombs it and brings it forth and then nurtures it.
Oh, it still amazes me how we can create a human being. Yeah, it still makes my head explode, the thought that we can just create a human being.
What, you mean in the ordinary way or in a test tube?
Ordinary way. It was interesting, actually. My son and I, we've been on a couple of trips because of school holidays. He's just coming up 16. I think I've said before, he wants to do anthropology, paleontology, or archaeology. He's got it all mapped out. But he wanted to go to Monkey World down in Dorset because he wanted specifically to look at the chimpanzees because of their evolution connection. And I mean, I've seen chimpanzees before, but we were right up close and personal. I'm pretty sure the chimpanzees were actually posing for the cameras.
Oh yeah.
They were right up by the glass. But it was actually quite freaky to see how human they were when they're only a couple of feet away from you. The way they move, the way they sit, the way they interact. There were a few baby ones as well. There were baby orangutans, which were hilarious.
They're gorgeous.
But to see their interaction, the way they deal with their babies, the way they connect with each other. One of the chimpanzees he was winding grass into a ball around his hand, and he'd made this ring of grass and he was carrying it everywhere with him, and every so often he'd pick up another bit of grass and wind it around his hand. To see how human they were was actually quite freaky. But fascinating to watch animals so close to us and how they interacted with each other. It was fascinating.
I found the way they look at you.
Yes.
And
my son thought I was weird talking to them all. Hello, gorilla. Hello, chimpanzee.
Quite apart from you weirdly talking to them, which I totally approve of, they look at you and they are seeing you.
Oh yes, the depth of One of the ladies came, stranger came, was looking at the sand and said, "Oh, they look so traumatized." They didn't. The Monkey World rescues. I mean, some of these monkeys had been rescued from photographers in Spain that had them strapped to roller skates and things to take photos with the tourists, and a few of them had come from Windsor Safari Park when that closed down, and they'd all basically been rescued from horrible places. And my son, who knows far more than I do about it all, said, you can see they're very happy. They're relaxed, they're chilled. If they were stressed or traumatized, they'd be tearing the fences down.
And there's also, and I'm sure your son knows this too, because they've got a similar face to us. You think of something stressful now.
You clench up, don't you?
Yeah. And so do they. And you
Yeah.
can see this.
Yeah. No, they were totally relaxed, totally chilled. The orangutans were doing like rolling around it was hilarious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I find it with all animals, I find that every now and again they'll look at you
Mm.
and they see you.
There's a connection, isn't there?
And you suddenly go, oh, you know, and I try and stay with it. Well, I do stay with it. And I
Mm.
teach the students, stay with that. Yes, it feels weird, but stay.
Yeah.
And they've all found the difference, you know, when they you know, they're living with a cat or a dog or they've got horses or whatever. And when they're actually sharing contact like that, they find the difference in the relationship they get
Mm.
is enormous.
Yeah.
And we said, it was only last week, we were saying our animals understand us
Yes.
much better than we understand what they say back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, they're probably thinking, oh, I need to go in me hungry kind of mode, you know. She won't get it otherwise.
Some of these chimpanzees, there was one lot of them, all had their own blankets. And they were moving their blankets, and they'd made, because it was quite a hot day, they'd made little blanket nests, and they were laying in their blanket. One of them had a teddy. He was carrying around with him. It was very, very human. You can definitely see that that's the connection where we, you know, started out from.
Yeah, indeed. No,
Not that they sang any folk songs or anything.
No, well, I mean, maybe they did, but maybe they were mental, like telepathic, or maybe
Yes, we didn't hear
it. Which is quite possible, because they are finding so much more now that animals and plants have these deep relationships that hadn't been suspected for hundreds, thousands of years, maybe.
No, we have lost it, haven't we? Like you say, the folk songs and it all needs to come back. And even simple things like the weather. I do a lesson with my students on the weather, working with weather magic and such. But I also get them to try and predict it.
Yeah.
Because that's a skill we've lost. We don't, you know, people would be able to just look at the sky or watch the birds and know what was going to happen, and we've lost that too. It's all about bringing a connection back to the land, isn't it?
It is, and that, I mean, well, we both do that so much. I mean, you know, I've been talking about rewilding a lot recently, and I mean that's what we do. We rewild ourselves on the apprenticeship, and you learn the old things. I mean, I was brought up with the weather, and you were brought up on a farm too, so you know what I'm talking about. But I've spoken to people, and you know, they've got like an ecology degree, and so, you know, a cloud appears quite high up in the sky. Oh, I wonder if it's going to rain. I said, no, it's too high. And they said, go, how do you know that? I said, do you ever watch what happens?
Yeah.
You know, I call that ecology. And there's like, oh.
And we're back again.
I've got my weather app on my phone, you know.
Yeah, we're back to those basics again, aren't we? Watching, taking notice, listening, really seeing things. Yeah, it's important.
And that gives you your contact with the goddess. And then you can start to really learn.
Yeah.
Because you're learning direct, not having to learn through umpteen layers of manuscripts, everybody translating them differently.
Yes. Yeah.
And a whole load of footnotes about other people's thoughts about them. You're actually getting right back into what the land is saying, what the tree is saying, what the river is saying, you know, the bird, all of this sort of stuff. And it's been denigrated, and academics have a tendency to say, oh, well, you know, that's just fanciful, or, you know, whatever. And and we get put down. And we've got to stop that putting down. This
starting to be proved, though, isn't it? I think the trees is one, isn't it, where they're actually scientifically proven now that they talk to each other.
Yeah.
So what we've been saying for years
is rubbish.
It's now being scientifically proven.
But isn't it weird that we need that kind of authority figure to tell
Yes,
us something before
to put a
we
rubber stamp
believe
on
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'm glad they are for the people who need the rubber stamp.
Yes.
But it's sad that so many people need the rubber stamp.
Yeah.
And they won't believe unless it's, been written down or
Something
somebody with
official
alphabet soup after their name has said it or something.
Yeah.
And that is really sad. And something, again, I think your courses do the same. My courses that say, right, okay, read stuff. It's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Have a pot of salt beside you while you're reading. And now go and try something for yourself.
Yeah.
And learn to believe
intuition.
your feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that does take experience, doesn't it? I think learning to trust your own intuition always takes experience.
It does, because we've had it so squashed, most of us.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're just imagining that. Sorry. So,
yes, on that note, we'll leave people with trusting their intuition.
Absolutely. And getting deeply into rewilding. And
yes.
I think there's some pictures of that garden up on YouTube or there will be very soon.
Gardener's World did a show from there on Friday, which I've recorded. I haven't watched yet. So
I haven't either yet.
Yeah,
no. So I'm hoping that he's mentioned it, because he probably would.
Yeah.
And go and have a look, because I've been doing it for years and it works.
Yeah.
And do get into it, because then you'll find the wild you inside.
Yeah.
And then you can talk to the goddess.
So everybody,
all of the goddesses,
do it. Yeah.